Somebody, Chris, remember somebody, this young man that worked at home, did baskets and stuff. I mean, always had a smile on his face. And he said, oh, every day he saw, he said, oh, it's a beautiful day. And then I was over one day, it's cold and misty rain like this, and he walked by and he said, it's a beautiful cold day.
Every day that God lets us read.
Yeah, you probably remember him, Flo. I can't remember his.
Who is it?
The young guy, he did the baskets. He was killed in a car wreck some years ago. He always had a smile and an attitude.
Oh, I know who you're talking
Yeah.
about.
I can't think of anybody you're talking about. The only time I saw a friend on him when Mike Ashes was in the playoffs in football, and Seth and my brother and I went to Georgetown, and they got beat. Mike Ashes got beat bad. And was walking out, and he was standing there, and she said, that was a bummer. Sometimes I saw him with a bad attitude.
That's what you're saying about the Rangers right now.
Oh, yeah, that was a bummer last night, too. Goodness. I finally was turning it on.
Henry,
Yeah.
who do I get to name for the baskets? I got one.
You got one? JC and myself. Yeah, he was. Yeah. That'd be fine. Okay, let's go to the Lord in prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we come to thee again, thanking you, Father, for the rain that you've given, Father, to us. Father, we just pray that you be with us and direct us as we watch this, go over this, Father, this amazing lesson. Open our hearts and minds, Father, in Jesus' name. Amen. Jealousy is hostility toward a rival or one believed to have an advantage. The definition in the Bible is jealousy. You know, I believe we've all experienced jealousy to one degree or another. I think maybe as boys when we was in school, maybe grade school, and there was jealous over a girlfriend or a friend. There was jealousy there, and I don't know why I never did partake of it. I never could understand why two boys were fighting over a girl when she was the one that causing the problems. She was standing back there and watching them fight. But you know, do you remember the Smothers Brothers? I don't know if you remember that. Said, my brother was an only child. That was, in fact, that was one of their albums saying it was my brother was an only child. You know, he said, you know, your mother liked you better than me. And he said, well, he said, you got a dog and I didn't. She said, well, you got a chicken. So, but anyway, you know, that's kind of, you know, even though that was, you know, comedy and joke, but I think some of it was serious. I know there was well, I won't call any names, but a couple here that had a son was born later in life than other kids, and we're standing out there one day, and one of his sisters said you would think he was the only child, and but you know, my brother and sister always believed that me being the baby of the family, I had certain privileges. Well, I was wondering why did I get twice as many whippings as they did? If I got all the privileges and got away with everything, I think I got double. You just put all theirs together, and I got more than they did. But I've said jokingly, you know, got to where I just get up in the morning and go take mother the belt, and just get it over with. You know, just. That's right. I was there. God gave them to me to show them that not all kids are perfect. And but what you were okay. I'm glad. Yeah. So was my brother and sister. They were perfect too. And but you know, it could be someone that we went to school with. You know, that was a little more athletic, or teacher's pet, and you were jealous of. You know, it could have been someone you worked with, really, who got the promotions or special assignments that you thought you deserved. Jealousy can breed hate and fear, as we'll see in the lesson. And you know, I think I never really put the two together, but jealousy does breed hate. You know, you can become so jealous of someone that you become to the point where you hate them. You can't stand to look at them. But Mark recounted how Jesus continued his trip toward Jerusalem and the cross. Instead of going straight to Jerusalem, Jesus stopped at Bethany and probably stayed at the home of his friends, Lazarus, Martha, and Mary. We don't know, but that we're just assuming. But Bethany was only a short distance from the main city and also provided easy access to one of Jesus' favorite spots, the Garden of Gethsemane on the Mount of Olives. Jesus sent two of his disciples into the city to start the preparations for his arrival. He told the men to bring him a particular donkey, a colt that had never been rode, and it would be at a particular location. And if anyone asked why they were taking the donkey, they were to tell them the Lord had need of him. Did the owner know Jesus? I've wondered, was this the stranger that had that donkey? And they said the Lord has need? We don't know. Some believe that Jesus had made prior arrangements for the use of the donkey. We don't, but I can't imagine, especially in today's time, you have an animal tied up, and here comes somebody, a stranger, and starts untying. So where are you going? Whoa, I'm taking this donkey. Well, no, you're not. So we don't know. But anyway, we don't know the particulars, but we do know the owner didn't resist. But no matter how the owner did, like I said, he didn't object or resist. But when the two returned, Jesus mounted the donkey and began what was known as the triumphal entry. Now, some readers and scholars note that the people in the crowd praising Jesus, they threw their cloaks down, threw the olive branches down, but some believe that the crowd praising Jesus on his arrival, ironically, were among some of the mob that was calling for his death just a few days later. Probably true. Chapter 11 and 12, on the next day, leaving Bethany, he became hungry. It says, seeing a fig tree at a distance that was leaved out, and on approaching the tree, he discovered there was no fruit or figs. Jesus, in turn, cursed the tree, saying, no one will ever eat fruit from this tree. Now, we'll look into more detail later on, but I've often wondered, why did he curse that tree? Why was there no fruit? Why was it? But we'll look at it later on. But someone now, let's read, go into our lesson text, read Mark 11:15 through 17.
And they come to Jerusalem, and Jesus went into the temple and began to cast them that sold and bought in the temple, and overthrew the tables of the money changers, and the seats of them that sold doves, and would not suffer that any man should carry any vessel through the temple. And he taught, saying unto them, it is not written, my house shall be called of all nations the house of prayer, but ye have made it a den of thieves.
The first century temple was a replacement of the original temple built by Solomon, which was destroyed by the Babylonians in 586 BC. Now, the second temple was built after the Jews returned from Babylon's exile, which was completed in 515 BC. Now, note God used three pagan kings. Now, you need some help here, Brother Steve, with the history and everything, but Artaxerxes, I don't know if that's even pronounced right. Artaxerxes, of course, he was responsible for the building of the walls, I think, with Nehemiah. But then there were Cyrus and Darius who start and complete the temple construction. I think Cyrus gave them, the exiles to return back to start the construction. Well, there was a stop put to it. I think it was about 20 years. Cyrus, but then I think Darius ordered the completion of the temple, and he financed it. Notice notice here that and I thought that we can be careful with this, but God used heathen people to rebuild his temple or to finance it. He used the Jews to do it, but we have to be careful with that in saying, well, I heard I said, well, if you break down in the middle of nowhere and there's a beer joint right across and they help you get going and everything, does that mean it's okay? Well, I've heard some that would use that. Well, that means that God's telling me there's nothing wrong with that, because if they hadn't been there, I wouldn't have got the help. Well, and this, like I said, we have to be careful with this too, because here was heathens that helped in the construction of the walls and the temple, and like I said, even was financed. So, but like I said, God can use it. God can use anyone or anything, and but like I said, I think we need to be careful how we appear look at that. But instead of being a place of prayer, worship, so Jesus went to the temple complex. Instead of being a place of worship and prayer, he saw the courtyard and became nothing more than a marketplace or stockyard. Due to the Passover festival of travelers all over came to buy animals for the necessary sacrifices to be made during the Passover. Now, Jesus is, I'm maybe getting ahead of it. He come here the day before, and it says there he looked around. I think verse 14. And he saw it was going on then, but Jesus didn't take action at that time. Instead, I think he, like I said, he went back to Bethany and the Smithonite, and I'm wondering, did he stew over it? Yeah, sure. Yes, yeah. Right. And I forget who it was this morning. I think it was Jeffers. He said, we can get mad. We can get angry. Yeah, right. We can get angry. And we see what Jesus times got angry. Uh, and But be careful. Moses got angry and struck the rock with his yeah. I've always said Moses had a temper. And because he killed the Egyptian soldier, he struck the rock, he threw the tablets down. So, right, yes, right. But like I said, I'm wondering, Jesus, the human side of him, being wondered, well, did he stay there that night and stewed over it? And the more he thought about it, the more upset he got. And but this event took place in an area of the temple known as the Court of Gentiles. This as far as this was as far as any non-Jew could go in the temple complex. Now, instead of being a place of prayer and worship, he saw the courtyard had become nothing more than a marketplace and stockyard. Due to the Passover festivals, travelers from all over came to buy animals for the necessary sacrifices to be made during Passover. Upset over the noise and distractions of being created in the courtyard, Jesus began forcing the merchants and their livestock out of the area. John 2:15 reads, he made a whip out of cords and drove all out of the courtyard. This tells me, Jesus wasn't a wimp. He worked at manual labor as a carpenter, and some say, and there's nothing really to back up, said that there was rock quarries, but he probably worked in the rock quarries there too. Well, that took a man to even do carpenter work or to work and to work in a rock quarry. I never forget years ago. Well, some of you remember Rufus in Maryland, but he was retired from the military, but was a carpenter. Worked as a carpenter. Well, our daughters were here, Shannon and Dana, and we were doing a special, and we went over to their house to practice the song. And on the way, I think it's Shannon saying, well, one of her sons was wanting to be a carpenter and said, but that's okay. It's noble. I'm all right with that. And we pulled up the house, and they said, gosh, what does he do? I said, he's a carpenter. But the four Gospels contain accounts of Jesus driving the merchants out, all four. Now, some say there were two different accounts of an incident, that Jesus had done this twice because John listed it at the beginning of his Gospel. But probably it's the same account due to John's account is not in chronological order. And it's pretty much accepted. I've went online, and some say, why did Jesus drive them out of the temple two times? But I think that's the most accepted account is John. It's the same instance, but John wrote it in the front because it wasn't in chronological order. So when dealing, in addition to selling merchandise, the money changers were exchanging currency from the Roman and Greek coins for Jewish coins. Now, they were probably charging an exorbitant fee for the transfer of coins. My guess is, of course, the temple officials were getting their cut too. They were getting their percent of it, and the cattle and the sheep were likely available. to those who could afford them. But for those who couldn't afford expensive animals for their sacrifice, doves were acceptable alternatives. Now, based on what he was seeing, Jesus knew that God's house was anything but a peaceful haven for worship. In other words, the temple, they were profiting on this. In other words, like I said, it's kind of like, in a way, uh, you can have, well, like my niece has a business, a building, but she sells, what do you call it? Uh, People that come in there and put their products. What? No, it's a consignment. Thank you. She sells consignment. Well, that may be kind of what was going on here. The temple sold consignment. I'll give you a booth here, and you get a booth here, but you pay so much for that booth, or I get a percent of what you're selling. So, but anyway, they were profiting on this, and but within those courts, those within the court of the Gentiles defied it with their business and made it difficult to worship, and in some cases, cheated those who had come for sacred purposes. Now, Jesus used a quote from the Old Testament, this time from the prophet Jeremiah 7:11. Just as Jeremiah had called out those who were going to the temple with the wrong motives and attitudes, Jesus also called out those who had turned the temple into a den of thieves. Now, I'm going to get on a soapbox here a little bit. And maybe I'm reading too much into this, but I think there's other scriptures to support it. But I believe Scripture supports God's way of supporting the ministry of the church, which is through tithes and offerings. I believe, like I said, I'm getting on a soapbox, and you may disagree, but we agree to disagree. But I believe car washes, bake sales, rummage sales, etc., in the name of the Lord, is sending a message to God: the way you're providing is not working. As far as I know, our church here has never had a money-making project open to the public, and God has always provided. We paid off the educational building within, 6 months? And so many other things, examples. I remember, and how many of you remember seeing, I hadn't seen it, well, I hadn't seen it, Ceplo Dollar. Remember I'll say one thing for him. He's a little, but Ceplo Dollar. Dollar. In other words, he has a church there in Watts, I think in Los Angeles. I believe it's Los Angeles. And he said, when we decided to build a church there in Watts, people told me there's no way you can build a church and finance a church building it in Watts. He said, we built it and we didn't sell one piece of fried chicken. In other words, it was through offerings and tithes and offerings. But some we've got a silent auction coming up. What about that? Well, it's through offerings. It's through our church. It's not advertised throughout the community. Same way as like we had work day. The kids hired out for work. It was within our church. It wasn't paying you. Well, you got to pay so much an hour for them work. It was out of free will. So to me, that's the difference. And we can go to 3 John 9, where it says, they were sent out among us, sent missionaries out among us, and they came out, didn't take anything from the Gentile, which I interpret that that's the heathen. But yet, so we should support them. And it's the same way. All of our ministries here in the church, we support it with our tithes and offerings. Okay, I'll get off that soapbox. But like I said, we've managed well. And like I said, I've got a problem personally with that. Yes. Yes. Right. Yes. There is. Yes. It's easy to slip into, and all of a sudden you're consignment, interest, and sure, then you got plenty of people who want booths there. Yeah. Well, I can remember several years ago in a business meeting, and some of them brought up the idea of the youth having a car wash, and they were just emphatic about it. And I remember AJ and somebody, the others sitting back there says, "We don't want it. We don't want it. And some kept insisting, that was the money. And they sat back there. I don't know if y'all remember that or not, but I remember AJ said, we don't want it. And but anyway, it's like I said, it can be a fine line, but it's always for a good cause, and it's in the name of the Lord and for a good cause, and I think that started really with the Catholics, bingo and things such as that, and then I think it just spilled over to other churches. I can remember growing up, Baptist churches, they wouldn't dream of having something like that. Yes. Yeah. 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 Right. Hmm. Well, even in Jesus' time, they had paid mourners. Yeah. Yeah. I hope I don't have to have paid. I hope Blue, I don't have to pay mourners. Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Hmm. Yes. Right. Yes. I do remember one time before we moved back there down here, Mother said they had a garage sale out here in the parking lot, but they didn't charge. There was no charge. Nobody would take anything because it was free. Well, finally they put a nickel on everything. So, but that's funny how some people are. It's free and nobody would take it. You know? Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah, they just can't get over that. You mean it's free? Yeah, some of them they just can't get over it. Yeah, and but like I said, it's a way of reaching children, reaching our community, and so forth. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. Right. Yeah, I know. Sure. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. It's just like, kind of like our sausage feast. I mean, if, we have left over and someone wants some, they just donate. We don't put a price on it. And so, but anyway, and it's hard for some to understand. And it is. And but like I said, I can remember a time that just wouldn't happen in a Baptist church. But and like I said, I think it started there with the Catholic Church, the bingos and rummage set, all that, and it just spilled over to other denominations. Oh yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, when we were in Brownwood, we had a mission church or association, and Luella worked there and had a clothing ministry. Uh, they got to the point where they never did charge, but they were limited to what people could get because they got armloads and then went and had a sale, a garage sale, and so they did have to finally limit. Like I said, they never did charge, but did have to limit. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. Right. Yeah, it's yeah. Yeah.
Trash bag. They can fill it up with whatever.
Yeah.
And they can only do it once a month.
Right. Yeah, I must confess, I know, but when Mother passed away, and of course she had a lot of things that then we took to the mission, and Glee, my niece and I went over, and of course she met, and they said, well, just go in the back, put it in the back, and I told her, so let's get out of here before they look at that. I ought to be ashamed. It wasn't junk, like it's clothing, right? Yeah. Well, we had. I'm getting off here, but when I was the headquarters for uh, the mission work there in the border, what was there in Van Horn. When I was working out there, I met I went out and met with the director of that, and he was showing them around. They had a big storage building where they had things, and he showed them around and pointed over and said, "Over there in the corner, that's our junk for Jesus." Yeah. Hmm. Right. Yes. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's hard to get a hold of for some people. Okay, someone read verses 18 and 19.
The chief priests and the scribes heard it and started looking for a way to kill him, for they were afraid of him because the whole crowd was astonished by his teachings. Whenever evening came, they would go out of the city.
Now, the religious leaders had become increasingly afraid and jealous of the following that had grown around Jesus. In other words, he's messing up their playpen. And in chapter 3, verse 6, the Herodians, a political party, plotted with the Pharisees on how they might get to destroy him. In other words, the Herodians, they were a political group. They weren't a religious group. But they opposed the Pharisees on every issue, but all of them envied Jesus' authority and popularity with the Jewish people, which they saw as a threatening their own power. Jealousy had crept in, which was a tool of Satan. Now, that's the only way you can look at it. You're talking about jealousy. It is a tool of Satan. It can breed hate and revenge. So the occurrence of all their pride and fears led the religious leaders to start looking for ways to get rid of their problem. He was their problem. While the religious leaders should have been focusing on praying and teaching God's ways faithfully, their attention was consumed with eliminating the threat of Jesus, even if it meant killing him. They feared him because all the people were astonished at his doctrine. Now, the Greek word for feared is phobio, which is where we get the English suffix phobia. While it can mean to hold reverence, a healthy fear, it can be translated terrify or dread. Now, I've always used, my dad. That was a reverent fear. Sometimes it wasn't a healthy fear, but it was but reverence. Our fear of God is a reverence fear. But the negative meaning fits the context here. The religious leaders were terrified of Jesus and his influence on the crowds. The triumphant entry, I think, was probably the icing on the cake. When he made that triumphant entry, and then he drove the money changers out, that was it. That was it. So when evening came, probably not daylight savings time, Jesus and the disciples made their way out of the city. Mark did not identify where they were headed, but as said earlier, Matthew's gospel notes they were headed to the village of Bethany. Bethany, like I said, was located a couple of miles southwest of Jerusalem on the eastern slope of the Mount of Olives and was situated on the road to Jericho. Now, I stated earlier, it is assumed he spent the night with Lazarus, Martha, and Mary. Now, Jesus didn't just cause a temple scene and immediately leave the city to avoid the retaliation of the Jewish leaders. You know, when he came in that morning, he drove out. He didn't run. He stayed there. Jesus remained at the temple throughout the remainder of the day, and he continued teaching the crowds that had gathered to listen to him until evening had come. Even though his disciples may have been nervous, they were probably trying to get him. We need to go. They're going to get you and get us too. But they were nervous about something might be done to Jesus. He did not fear because he knew his time had not yet come. It would not happen until the appointed hour, so he was committed to revealing the kingdom and fulfilling the task the Father had given him. Remember when they were going to throw him off a cliff? He disappeared through the crowd, and it was because it was not his time. Jesus practiced during the first 3 days of Passion Week was not to leave the city until sunset. When the crowd dispersed and the city gates were about to close is when he left. In other words, he stayed there. We don't know what time he got there that morning. It's about 2 miles from Bethany to Jerusalem. So when he arrived there, that's when he drove the money changers out of the temple courtyard. Yeah, the noise and everything. Right, and then I didn't add, but people were bringing their goods and livestock through the courtyards, and it was just a disturbance, a mess. Everything was out of control, and like I said, where were the temple officials? Where were the priests?
I mean, I have enough problems sitting down to pray with that and thoughts coming into my mind.
Yeah.
Satan, leave me alone. Let me get this done.
Yeah.
Without sitting there trying to pray with all that noise.
Yeah.
How would you do that?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just like I love my sister-in-law, but when she come out, that last Sunday morning, I don't know whatever morning it was, I was trying to watch Robert Jeffries, and she's in there. I finally just turned it off. Yeah, and talking. That's right. They get blamed for everything. Yeah. Just stop.
Turn it off.
Yeah, turn it off.
Whatever.
Right. So we can just kind of picture that scene. Like I said, it was just utter chaos. And like I said, the temple officials should have put a stop to it. But like I said, they were profiting off of it, getting their share. So and it was just like I said, just out of control. And I can imagine Jesus did stew all night, thinking about it, and he just come to the end. That's all he could handle. And so he made that card and I mean, and you can just picture that. And nobody stood up to him. And so, like I said, he was no wimp. And like we sometimes try to picture him, or people picture him as this real calm person, and he did, like I said, he got angry. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Right. Yes. Yes. And but it is like I said, it's just just to picture that how it was. Yeah, he probably was, probably making it right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. Well, and that, our study we had of Jeremiah, the same thing. They were desecrating the temple, and Jeremiah, wrote in the. They had to hide. They had to hide him. Jeremiah and his right one that wrote for him. So it's nothing new, and it still goes on today. I'm sure in some some churches and some and it's like I said, it's hard to grasp sometimes. But it's kind of like it's my way or the highway. If we don't do what we want, we'll just drive you out. And but someone read now verses 20 through 25.
And in the morning, as they passed by, they saw the fig tree dried up from the roots. And Peter, calling to remembrance, saith unto him, Master, behold, the fig tree which thou cursest is withered away. And Jesus answering saith unto them, Have faith in God, for verily I say unto you, that whosoever shall say unto this mountain, Be thou removed, and be thou cast into the sea, and shall not doubt in his heart, but shall believe that those things which he saith shall come to pass, he shall have whatsoever he saith. Therefore I say unto you, what things soever ye desire when ye pray, believe that ye receive them, and ye shall have them. And when ye stand praying, forgive. And if ye have aught against any, that your Father also which is in heaven may forgive you your trespasses.
Boy, what a lesson here.
I was thinking when Peter asked this question, I wondered if he, part of the kind of answer that Jesus would give. That's more than I wanted to hear.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. And I've often wondered about why did he curse the fig tree? What was it? But I think the lesson that explains it well. But as Jesus and his disciples were traveling back from Bethany to Jerusalem the next day, they passed the fig tree that Jesus cursed earlier in the week. So Butch could read Mark 11, 12, and 14 through 14.
And on the morrow, when they were come from Bethany, he was hungry. Seeing a fig tree far off, having leaves, he came, that happily he might find anything thereon. And when he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for the time of the figs was not yet. And Jesus answered and said unto it, No man eat fruit of thee hereafter forever. And his disciples heard it.
Like I said, I've often wondered, there was no fruit. It wasn't season, but why did he, and there's a lesson we'll look at further on, what was the lesson here? But surprised at how the tree had deteriorated so quickly, Peter pointed it out to Jesus. Mark did not interpret the meaning, but the leader's guide, the teacher's quarterly, suggests Jesus was using the withered tree as an illustration of what would eventually happen to the temple. Now, I was like David Jeremiah's in his study Bible, his interpretation. It says, the fig tree without fruit is a picture of Israel. It has the appearance of life, but produces nothing of substance. We can go on further with that. Our churches today, some of them, is that also not a picture of some of our churches? They have an appearance of life, but produces nothing of substance. What about individuals, Christians today? We may have an appearance of life, but produces nothing of substance. We may put on the show, or what you say, put on the dog, and come and dressed in all fine linens and stuff, and come to church and put that dollar in the offering plate, and we have the appearance that everything is fine. Right. Yes, that sure is. But like I said, but they had an appearance of life, but produced nothing. In the Middle East, the leaves. Now, this is to me, it explains it more to me. But in the Middle East, the leaves of the fig tree appear in the spring, but ripe figs don't arrive until June. Now, this was the calendar don't work here. Why was Jesus looking for figs when they didn't produce then? But why in verse 3 says, but it was not the season for figs. See, that even throws more question. Not was the season for figs. Why then did Jesus expect to find fruit? Fig trees can produce 2 crops per year. The berba, the B-R-E-B-A crop, develops before the leaves appear in the spring. So Jesus, seeing the tree at a distance, there could have been a chance there would have been some fruit because it's already leaved out. So, like I said, the ones in the spring, they can produce the fruit before the leaves put on. So he's saying at a distance the leaves, so there must be fruit. If that makes sense, it can be more confusing. But sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Sure. So, like I said, so Jesus seeing the tree at a distance, there could have been a chance there'd been some fruit, because the fruit in the spring came on the tree before the leaves. So that would tell you that there could be a chance of fruit, but there wasn't. So that's the reason he cursed it. And like I said, I think it's a picture of Israel. It's a picture of our churches, some of our churches, and a picture of us. That we look all good and plain and proper, but there's no substance in what we do. What? Fruit is inspected. Yes, we're fruit inspectors. Yes, that's so true. Yes. Oh, yes. We're in trying times now. We're in really trying times. And what's getting the attention, the media coverage? The ones that are protesting against Israel. And yeah, and I tell you what, the way I read my Bible, I'm with Israel. But by the first century, the religious leaders wanted the people to trust their interpretations of the law. But Jesus taught that God must be the object of our faith. That is the only way He will work in our lives. Unfortunately, we have religious leaders today that will tell us or tell their people, if you're searching for answers to your questions, you come to me. I mean, we've heard it. We've all heard it. There's nothing wrong with seeking wise counsel, but after seeking biblical answers. In other words, you get the word wise counsel. There's nothing wrong to go with Brother Steve with a question. But Brother Steve's not saying if you need an answer to something, come to me. I've got all the answers. And we do have leaders in our churches that with that attitude. But wise counsel, that's the key word. Jesus seized this teaching moment to explain why steadfast faith in God is so important. Jesus said faith could move a mountain into a sea. Connie, if you read Matthew 17:20.
He said to them, because of your little faith, for truly I say to you, if you have faith like a grain of mustard seed, you will see this mountain move from here to there, and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you.
I don't like the word that the writer, and we just got a few minutes, so I got to hurry. The word hyperbole, that means extravagant exaggeration, allowed Jesus to reinforce the truth about nothing is impossible to God. In other words, there's nothing exaggeration about Jesus or God. The writer called this an extravagant exaggeration, the moving a mountain into the sea. But I don't believe God exaggerates anything. Jesus also highlighted the fact that genuine faith leaves no room for doubt. If we believe God can move a mountain, we better not doubt it. I've said with the tongue in cheek, when we built this bypass here, they cut through a mountain. I said, somebody may have prayed to move that mountain. We don't know. But Elijah prayed for rain, and there was one little cloud appeared. As he taught about prayer, Jesus encouraged his followers to ask freely and to believe that God would hear. That does not imply that our prayers obligate God to grant every request. Thank goodness he doesn't. Just as faith is an essential element of prayer, so is forgiveness. If we want our prayers to be effective, we cannot come to God holding a grudge. We cannot expect him to answer them if we are not even able to forgive others or seek forgiveness from others if needed. Okay, Butch, Matthew 5:23-24. I know, we got you, T.
Bring thy gift to the altar, remember that thy brother hath fought against thee. Leave there thy gift before the altar, and go thy way. First be reconciled to thy brother, and then come and offer thy gift.
Offer thy gift. That's pretty strong words there. Closing, I don't know, most of you have. This is mustard seeds. Faith the size of a mustard seed. Small. Yeah. You want to look at that, you can, but that's not very big. Now, if y'all had sausage, you had some mustard seed in that sausage mix. Okay, we better close. JC, would you close for us, please?
Continue to keep us. We just thank you so much.